Welcome to This Day Live, the Sunday talk show, where we discuss all things political, bringing you the top stories locally, nationally, and from around the world. I'm Ruben Abati, and This Day Live begins now. I'd like to welcome today's panelists, Professor Bola Akinterenwa, Director General, Bolitech Center for International Diplomacy and Strategic Studies, Chike Ogia, former Commissioner of Information, Delta State, and Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director, Enough is Enough. Well, good to see you again this weekend on This Day Live. Here in Nigeria, let's start with Nigeria. Authorities have rearrested journalist and activist Omoyele Sowore a day after he was released by the Department of State Services in compliance with the court order, which had been flouted twice.
The country is not lawless, so you're telling us to stop. Hey, wait.
Video footage broadcast live on television shows Mr. Sowore pinned to the floor during scuffles with state security agents at a court hearing. This is a dramatic way the day unfolded in the Abuja courtroom live on television.
What is important for Nigerians to know is that I am not going to give up. Yes. Until every Nigerian benefits from a country that is theirs. And I've made it very clear. They tried to break me in prison. They sent delegations to me, offering all kinds of, and I refused. And they promised that I would not walk out of their detention alive. That is what they came here to implement today. Nobody in Nigeria should be afraid. It is our country, and some people have to make the sacrifice for this country to be a country of rule.
Now, a ranking member of the United States Senate's Foreign Relations Committee, Senator Bob Menendez, has condemned the rearrest of the rights activist Omoyele Sowore. In a statement on Friday, Senator Menendez, who had been involved in attempts to pressure the Nigerian government on this matter, also promised U.S. intervention towards resolving not just the Sowore case, but also everything that affects the fundamental freedoms of all Nigerians. We'll take a short snippet of the speech.
Agency. New Jersey is watching, the United States is watching, and the world is watching. I fear that the blatant harassment of Mr. Sowore and activists and journalists whose only crime appears to be exercising his right to free expression is becoming symptomatic of increasingly closing political and civic space in Nigeria. The Nigerian court had twice ordered his release on bail, and the state security agencies openly defied the court order each time, leading me to conclude either that Nigeria no longer respects the rule of law, or President Buhari is woefully out of touch with what agents of his government are doing in his name. This is unacceptable in a country that calls itself a democracy.
Meanwhile, in the latest development, the Department of State Services is accusing rights activist Omoyele Sowore of playing out an orchestrated drama. The DSS also denied invading an Abuja division of the Federal High Court to ensure the rearrest of Omoyele Sowore. Well, very sordid drama at the Federal High Court in Abuja, in the Court of Justice Ijoma Ojukwu during the week, and many Nigerians are outraged. In fact, a lot of people have called for a probe, or the naming and shaming of the DSS officers involved in this. Today, Garuba Shehu has issued a statement, I guess in response to Senator Menendez and those who have been criticizing the government, to say that it's not the responsibility of the president of Nigeria to direct the Department of State Services on a day-to-day basis, because the DSS has his own constitutional mandate. And to blame President Buhari for what happened in court or the conduct of the DSS, he says is unfair. Also today, the State Department in the United States has also issued a statement expressing concern about rule of law in Nigeria, about due process, about judicial independence in Nigeria. It doesn't seem as if the matter will go away very quickly. And we're told that Sowore's lawyers are going back to court this week to take up the matter. But Yemi, I mean, you were in Abuja to protest along with the concerned Nigerians at the time when the DSS refused to obey court order. Now, they gave an impression that they had obeyed court order, but then again, they've rearrested Omoyele Sowore, and Bakare is in hiding. So apparently, enough is not yet enough.
No, not quite, and very unfortunately so. I mean, I was in court on Thursday when Justice Ojukwu gave her ultimatum. I left Abuja Thursday night, thinking that Friday will be mere process. So you release him Thursday night, and you decide by Friday morning, 7 p.m. to Friday morning at 9 a.m., you suddenly have new charges, quote unquote, or new reason to want to arrest him. Because why would you be in court, and why would you have him now? The DSS has not said why he was arrested, neither have they said what new charges they have against him. But I think what's, for me, very symptomatic of this DSS's challenge is that in their statement, they seem to take pride in saying that they obeyed Justice Ojukwu's ultimatum, because those words were in their statement. But Justice Ojukwu's order was given on it was perfected on November 8th. By November 8th, she had signed Sowore's bail papers. But you are now saying as a security service that you obeyed the ultimatum, not referring to the fact that you had disobeyed her judgment for a month prior to that. That's number one. Number two, the presidency and their statement saying that the DSS, the president doesn't need to interfere. Nobody's asking them to intervene in day-to-day affairs, not by any stretch of the imagination. But as a country, we recognize three arms of government: the judiciary, the legislature, and the executive. The DSS is an agency of the executive arm of government. Now, if the DSS is acting in a way that does not support the constitution of the country, or the spirit of the country, or the spirit of this administration, which says that rule of law is something that's important to them, then there is an expectation of the president to speak or act. So Garba Shewu's statement is completely meaningless. Not only is it meaningless, it's quite asinine, if I would say that, because it doesn't address anything, neither does it say anything to the responsibility of the executive arm of government to use the cohesive powers of states to ensure that every agency follows the rule of law. And that, for me, is a concern, because they seem to think that this is okay. But if we put it in perspective over the last 7 years, maybe we shouldn't be too surprised. I said this at the last time we spoke about Sowore. Dasuki's bail conditions was not responded to, but Dasuki, nobody really cares. El-Zakzaky, quite a bit of brouhaha until he was allowed to go to India for medical attention. And now Sowore. We were here when the DSS invaded the homes of judges. Under Fayose, if we're not mistaken as well, Governor Fayose, when he was a governor, brought thugs into the courtroom to beat up a sitting judge. So these things have happened. So for the presidency to respond in this manner is definitely a cause for concern. Yeah,
the reign of impunity on all fronts. Yeah. But let me come to you, Chike. Some people have said that, the DSS going to rearrest Sowore, that Sowore probably asked for it, because as they argue, the pro-government camp, they insist that, look, after his release, he granted interviews, and that's not part of the terms of his bail.
Interviews where?
Yes, but he was shown talking to, the press, some persons recording him, so that's one excuse. And some people said, even in the court, immediately he came out of court, he started talking to the press, and that footage is also out there, and that, he himself has a responsibility to respect the terms of his bail. But what do you think?
Well, I don't know. Maybe from my face you can tell, because this is a very black time for Nigeria, if you ask me. And I think it's very, very, very unfortunate. The optics are very, very bad, extremely bad. You see, before we lift the veil and start knowing what the issues are, and as would be expected, you know, the waters are now terribly muddied and you don't even know which is which. All the information is all upside down. But the truth is that in present-day global affairs, there is no reason for the kind of thing that happened in the courtroom, the hallowed chambers of a courtroom that we saw. You see, the former boss of the DSS lost his job basically because he did that in the hallowed chambers of the National Assembly. But I dare say that this is even a notch higher than that, because this is where laws are incubated and this is where laws are, you know, dispensed.
Justice is dispensed.
Or justice is dispensed, exactly. And for that kind of thing to happen, I'm not the greatest admirer of Sowore, because as far as I'm concerned, a lot of karma, a bit of karma is happening to everybody across the board. If you notice that were responsible for bringing this government in, they're all getting their payback. You know,
they are comeuppance.
They are comeuppance, as you call it. So that really, I don't really care about. But what I care about and what really is so painful to me is the fact that we cannot afford to become a pariah state again at this time. We have too many development challenges that we should be focusing on. I mean, Sowore, yes, he can be a nuisance, he's doing all these things, but as far as I'm concerned, the government is even playing into his hands. And they are the ones, you know, getting this thing escalated. Okay, a senator now in America, who's the senator of wherever Sowore stays in America, has intervened. Doesn't Sowore have a senator from Ondo? Has he said anything? And the kind of quiet we are getting from all kinds of places. In fact, I'm so embarrassed, especially for persons in the legal profession that are in this government that I have very high regard for. And I know them. This is what government can do.
Well, some people have called on the Nigerian Bar Association to sanction all lawyers in privileged positions in the Buhari government.
Well, I don't know.
And some people have argued, no, that's not the way to go.
No, I don't think that's the way to go. But I expect them, starting with the very distinguished vice president of ours, a professor of law.
Some people have said, leave the vice president out of it.
No, we can't leave him out. He has to speak out.
People insist.
No, let me tell you,
that the buck stops at the president's desk.
I agree with you, but this concerns his constituency. This is about the legal profession. This is where he made his name. He is my teacher, he's my friend, he's my mentor, he's my everything. And you see, you can't come in now.
He's not the Attorney General.
I agree.
But
the point is that the silence, the context that people have for that.
Say something about this subject.
Okay.
Otherwise, we'll spend 30 minutes on it.
But it's important. Very important.
Yeah, I thank you. It's most unfortunate that the president of Nigeria does not appear to understand the issues he's presiding over as president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. First of all, this Sowore saga has been given an international dimension. You have rightly pointed out the intervention of a US Senator, right, in this case. That's to let you know that what is currently happening in Nigeria is being internationally monitored. Now calling to question the foreign policy international responsibility of Nigeria, if we are not careful. First of all, I think that the DSS...
Prof, before you make that statement about the DSS, let's take a quick commercial break, and then when we come back, we'll take your comment on the DSS. It's still ThisDayLive, the Sunday talk show. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back to ThisDayLive, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. Still with me in the studio, I have Professor Bola Akinterewa, Director General, Polytech Center for International Diplomacy and Strategic Studies, Chike Ogea, former Commissioner of Information, Delta State, and Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director, Enough is Enough. Well, Prof, you are going to make some comments about the Department of State Services in relation to the treatment so far of Omoyele Sowore.
Yes, I look at the attitudinal disposition of the DSS at two levels. The first level is that DSS comprises very bright, very intelligent, well-trained people who, I want to believe, cannot be acting without their educational background impacting on what they are doing. And by so doing, to argue that the DSS might deliberately be doing what it is doing in order to attract, to garner public support in terms of hostility, garner public hostility vis-a-vis the Buhari administration. There are many people in government in the world over. When they are against their government and they don't have the means of complaining, all right, they do what is contrary. And in that case, allowing the public, in this particular case now, what I have seen in the video, the DSS is trying to antagonize the feelings of the Nigerian public so that the Nigerian public will be very, very angered, unhappy with the government. And by so doing, the attitude of the DSS will now be an agent provocateur. That is, now making the public fight the Buhari administration, which it cannot do directly. The other...
Are you accusing the Department of State Services of being a fifth columnist organization?
I do not always accuse. I carry out analysis. I am telling you that it's a possibility because I do not expect DSS of the current standing of people with sagacious mind. It is not unlikely. What I'm trying to say is that I look at empirical cases the world over and see what has been happening. If you look at how the Second World War started from Poland, a man riding on a bicycle, there must always be a pretext. So in this case, the critical point is that Buhari, his administration, is on record to have a flair for primacy of so-called national security interests to the detriment of rule of law. And that's what we are all witnessing.
Well, I mean, I'm sure it's a subject that will continue to engage public attention, both locally and internationally, as it continues to unfold. But let's take another story. This has to do with former governor of Abia State, Orji Uzor Kalu, from the government house to the Senate chambers and now to prison. The Federal High Court in Lagos has convicted him, a former governor of Abia State in the eastern part of Nigeria, Orji Uzor Kalu, who have been standing trial for a 7.1 billion naira fraud. Kalu completed an 8-year tenure as governor 12 years ago. He's a serving senator at the 9th National Assembly. The court found him and his co-defendants guilty of the entire 39 counts filed against them by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission. Justice Mohammed Idris sentenced Kalu to 12 years imprisonment while he ordered the winding up of Kalu's company, Slok Nigeria Limited. He's also accused of illegally taking 450 million from Abia's treasury.
2007, we filed this charge in July. You knew what we went through, how even the Federal Attorney General then, Andoka by name, Michael Andoka, attempted to frustrate this case and said that we could not file a charge against somebody who has just finished his office on account of fundamental right order that he got in his hometown. And we battled that for... Well, it means that we should not give up, and that there is still hope in our nation. There are judges that are still courageous. There are people who are still courageous that can sacrifice anything to ensure that justice is done, to ensure that the right thing is done, to ensure that our nation reputation is redeemed from those who have damaged it. And then I'm also happy for the people of Abia State whose funds were mismanaged and were helpless and could not get their fund back. And I think through this process, we should be able to get the fund back to Abia State people.
What's the summary of the sentencing?
Well, the sentencing.
Well, Chike, let me start with you. Obviously, there are limits to Section 308 of the 1999 Constitution of Nigeria. You know, it doesn't exist, you know, forever.
Perpetuity.
Yes, and But what do you think about the Orji Uzor Kalu case? He will be the 6th governor who has been convicted since 1999, coming after Lucky Igbenedion, James Ibori, James Ngilari of Adamawa State, Jolin Yame of Taraba State, and who else have I
Plateau.
Plateau, Joshua Dari of Plateau State.
And 3 of them under this administration, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Well, but you see, that's the problem I have. I think the credit should go to the PDP government because this whole action started there. Now, whether we like it or not, the impression had been given at some point that anybody that has any sins should come over to the APC and it will be forgiven. Remember that very famous quote. And obviously, we can see that that has not happened. In fact, people are like, maybe whoever said that should be sued for fake news, or whatever, or hate speech, or whatever you want to call it. But the truth is that it's very unfortunate, when you see people who God have blessed and put in such high positions when they fall from such pedestals. But what I think is instructive here is that the wheels of justice turn slowly, you might say. Look at all the years it has taken.
Well,
yeah, but it turns surely. And it is very unfortunate. I don't know. I have not seen the judgment. I have not read it. But from what I hear it was a slam dunk judgment. That it was very simple because apparently government monies were just taken out directly straight and lumped in either individuals or company accounts. And that is why you notice the judgment was that even the company should be wound up and all the monies. That's the other aspect of the judgment I think we have to look into because all those monies were Abia State money. They were not federal government money. So why is the judgment saying those monies should be forfeited to the federal government?
And not Abia State.
Yes, and not Abia State. So I think really if of course, without prejudice to what has happened, they still have a right of appeal. You understand the hierarchy of courts. We still have to go all the way to the Supreme Court. And if at the end of the day, he's found out that, yes, he indeed is guilty of these offenses, I think somewhere down the line, maybe the appellate courts will begin to tinker with the judgment, especially as to where these monies should go back to. I think it's very important because it's the people of Abia State that have lost out.
I mean, shortchanged.
Yes.
Prof, let me come to you. Some people have raised other questions, apart from the one that has been identified by Chike as to who should be the beneficiary of the winding down of SLOC Nigeria Limited. Some people have said, look, Kalu's seat should be declared vacant and he should not be paid any salaries while he's away from the Senate chambers. But what's your take generally on this and the substantive issue?
Yes, that particular perspective is valid from the point of law. I do not agree with Chike when he made the statement that, well, he's going for appeal. He believes that he's not guilty right now. No.
I didn't say that, Prof. Don't put the words in my mouth. I never said anything like that. I'm a very senior lawyer.
Hold on.
I could never have said that.
What you said is that
yes.
If he is guilty, you are still saying that...
He is guilty. He's already been found guilty.
Okay,
but there's a right of appeal. That's all I just reduced our minds to.
All right. We will not quarrel on that one. For as long as you agree that he's currently guilty.
Of course. He's been found guilty by High Court of unlimited jurisdiction.
The appeal court can only say, okay, you are no longer considered guilty.
Of course.
All right. Now, if he's guilty...
the appeal court can vary the judgment.
Yes, precisely.
Like our Abia issue.
Now, if we admit that he's guilty, then your question will be very easy to answer. And the answer will be this: yes, if he's guilty, why should he be occupying any public position? The law is clear on that. The law is that if you are convicted, you cannot aspire to occupy any public position. So currently, he's considered guilty. And whoever is asking for the declaration of his seat to be declared vacant will be very correct. You see, what I do not like about the person of Kalu in this case is the type of advice, the type of regret he has. He's advising the Okorochas of this world now to learn a lesson from his experience. He's saying that, look, in fact, he didn't expect the court to rule against him since he has decided to join the APC administration. Now I found that...
So in other words, he has been used and dumped.
Of course, that's what he said. So for a Kalu, an Orji, an Uzor, not to have known his onions, to have accepted to be used, only to complain that he has been used and dumped, is most sorrowful. You see, the issue now is that it gives a very bad name to the APC government by saying that you have a government which seeks to admit very corrupt people, very bad people, very unpatriotic people to join the administration. And then when they join, you use them, you dump them.
No, on the contrary, it gives a good name to the APC.
No, that's the other
that
side.
If you join us, don't think we will protect you if you have issues.
That is the other side of the coin, to which I intend to come. You see, the beauty of the submission of Kalu in this case is simply that political governance in Nigeria is largely predicated on dishonesty. So,
well,
that is...
on that note, Prof, we'll have to take another short commercial break, and when we return, I'll come back to you, Yemi, because I can see you are itching to have a word on this subject. We'll be right back. It's still ThisDayLive, the Sunday talk show. Welcome back to ThisDayLive, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. Still with me, Professor Bola Akintenwa, Director General, Bolitak Center for International Diplomacy and Strategic Studies, Chike Ogea, former Commissioner of Information, Delta State, and Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director, Enough is Enough. Now, before we went on break, we were discussing the conviction of former Governor of Abia State, Orji Uzor Kalu. And, Prof was responding to the point about whether his seat should be declared vacant or not, and whether he can still collect his salaries and allowances as a senator of the Federal Republic. Well, the spokesperson of the Senate actually addressed this and said that there is nothing in the Constitution that says that the seat should be declared vacant, and that the Senate would wait until the process is exhausted all the way to the Supreme Court before they can take any decision on that. He refused to comment on the issue of salaries and allowances. But he made it clear that in the case of Joshua Darie, who was convicted in 2018, his seat, was not declared vacant until the 8th National Assembly, departed. But Yemi, you were going to say something about the entire case.
Indeed, I think two things. I'll start from that one and say that while they do have the right of appeal, as you rightly noted, the fact that they're in jail means they are seen as guilty until the appeal court turns them otherwise. And to Prof's point, a convict can't run for office. So the Senate spokesperson's interpretation of what the Constitution says is a bit worrisome, because he's basically trying to say until all his processes is done, then we won't declare the seats. But as far as the fact that he's sitting in prison, you don't put innocent people in prison.
Yes.
So I think that should really count for something. It's something definitely that we should take up. But I think what I found very interesting about Kalu's conviction was 12 years. But it took a judge saying that you've basically made a mockery of this process. And from when it was sent back, because it went all the way to the Supreme Court, and by the time it was sent back down, it took exactly 2 years for him to now be given judgment. Meanwhile, he had basically played in the courts for 10 years. Adjourning, filing separate motions. And these are things that you can do when you have, I guess, a bottomless pit of money to work with. And then the third point I wanted to make is that we missed out on Dimipre Alamesiega, who's also... So this will be the seventh. This will be the seventh one. Yeah. But I guess let me not say the final point. That, yes, while it was started under PDP, because it started in 2007, I think it is important, as you said, to commend the APC, that they have... The fact that they joined the party didn't then allow because the case could have been adjourned ad infinitum as he had done for 10 years.
And he died.
Exactly. So
Okay.
that's quite
one
important.
final point before we move to the next story.
Oh, sorry,
is
I
to
wanted
comment SERAP,
Yes.
the civil society group that stayed on this matter and ensured that nothing was done, to bury the case.
But just to add this, while we're speaking about the court, you had made the point earlier about Sowore's rearrest. Even if Sowore had violated the terms of his bail, the DSS does not, by law, have the right to rearrest him. Because it was the court that granted him bail, not the DSS. If you believe that he's violated the terms of his bail, you go back to said court and say, Justice Ojukwu, this man that you said could be out on bail has violated these jail terms. Therefore, we would like to pick him up again. And the DSS did not do that. So for those who are saying that if that is the case, they need to go back to the court. They do not have the powers to rearrest him.
You cannot act as judge and jury in their own case. Let's take the issue of pension. Again, this is about governors. For 21 states with pension laws stipulating post-office benefits running into billions of naira for their former governors and deputies, it was a sigh of relief on Wednesday as the Federal High Court sitting in Lagos ordered the Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Abubakar Malami, to recover all funds paid as pension to SY state chief executives who are also serving in the National Assembly or as ministers. The court, presided over by Justice Oluremi Oguntoyinbo, while delivering judgment in a suit filed by the Socioeconomic Rights and Accountability Project, SERAP, also ordered the AGF to challenge the legality of states' pension laws permitting former governors and other ex-public officials to collect such pensions. A total of 21 states had at various times promulgated pension laws allocating huge benefits to former governors despite public objection. The states are Lagos, Akwa Ibom, Edo, Delta, Kano, Gombe, Yobe, Borno, Bauchi, Abia, Imo, Bayelsa, Oyo, Osun, Kwara, Ondo, Ebonyi, Rivers, Niger, Kogi, and Katsina. Immediately affected by the order are 5 ministers in the cabinet of President Muhammadu Buhari and 9 senators. The ministers are Mr. Babatunde Fashola, Senator Godswill Akpabio from Akwa Ibom, Honorable Chibuke Amechi from Rivers, Mr. Rauf Aregbesola from Osun, the Minister of Interior, and Chief Timipre Silva, Minister of State Petroleum from Bayelsa State. And we have that on the screen there. Well, I mean, many Nigerians have jubilated, they've celebrated this particular ruling because they do not see any reason, as has been argued in the Zamfara case, where the pension law in the state has been repealed, why anyone who had served as governor or deputy governor should remain a parasite on the state, collecting in some cases up to 200 million per annum, 6 cars to be changed every 4 years, accommodation in the state and also in the Federal Capital Territory, medical allowance,
at home and abroad,
for the former officer
and the family
and his, members of his family. Okay,
it depends.
And all of this for
drivers
life.
as well,
collecting rent for work not done. What is even worse is that it's been alleged that some of them who are even still occupying public positions in Abuja, either as ministers or as senators, they collect allowances and salaries for the new position, and they still collect the rent, that have been awarded to them from the states.
But let's start from your last.
Yes.
I know I've read somewhere that both my friend Babatunde Fashola and Rotimi Amechi said they have never collected one penny.
Yes, and also Aregbesola from Osun.
Okay, I didn't.
But he's a new one.
Yes, he just left office.
So just to make a point on that, because we followed this for quite a number of years, the fact that you're entitled to it and the fact that you're not given are two different things.
No, that you didn't collect. I'm sure they were given. They were asked to come and
maybe
take
they have not yet applied for it.
No, they refused to apply. That's the point I'm making. And I think it's commendable.
The law, if I'm not mistaken, for Lagos, the law was passed under Fashola.
Oh, yeah, it's a law. It's a law. He just said, I'm not going to do this. because it is morally wrong.
But he signed it into law.
No. But you see, that's the point. Maybe it was convention and everybody.
So, and why I say that because the governors.
No, maybe these persons have not claimed the money as savings. They may be keeping the money as savings.
Let's be clear, Mr. Chike. Hold on. Let's be clear. Because part of it. No. Because think about it in this context. Because part of it that some of them are unable to collect because of political. So Amechi and in Rivers, I won't be surprised because I would be surprised if Governor Wike actually gives it.
No, it doesn't matter. A law is a law. But the point you are making, which I think I agree with you, is that yes, Fashola passed that law when he was governor, but maybe when he passed the law, he didn't know he was going to be a minister, obviously. So the fact that he's now a minister obviously makes him like, why should I be collecting salary?
But he didn't immediately become a minister.
He didn't, and for the time.
So did he collect during the time? That's the question.
That's what I don't know. But I doubt it because remember the way he left.
But I think that is not even the big issue.
Yes.
The big issue.
No, that's why I just want to.
The big issue is that Nigerians are saying that in all the states, the law should be repealed.
Let me tell you something. Our problem.
And can the Attorney General of the Federation act as a collection agent for the states?
Let me tell you something.
And is he in a position on his own to repeal the laws from Abuja?
Let me tell you something. All we're saying, we're just talking. Because the problem in all of this is the Nigerian constitution. We have a unitary constitution that was handed over to us by the military to administer a federation. It can never work.
How is this tied to the constitution?
Because if everything we're saying now about these guys passing their own laws or not passing their own laws.
That's the spirit of a federation.
That's right. If they were allowed to do the things that will make them pass their laws, i.e., they don't go on pilgrimage every month to Abuja to collect money. You call them chief executive, chief security officers of their state, and they have the total control. None of them can talk to the Inspector General of the Police.
No, but let's talk about this issue. They pass the laws in their state. So what's your point?
The point I'm making is that the whole thing is flawed ab initio.
How?
Yes, but how do we correct it? How do we affect it?
But I don't even understand this point. You're trying to make a point about why we need to run as a federation.
Yes.
And 21 states of 36 passed laws to benefit their ex-governors.
Let me tell you something.
So how is this not the full implementation of a federation?
Let me tell you something. Because if you let the country run as a federation, out of that 21 states that passed that law, the ones that can actually afford it, one or two might be there.
Is it the affording of the law that makes an issue?
It's part of it. When you don't pay pensioners in your state, and then some governors are chatting away millions of money. You can disagree. That's your opinion. That's your opinion. I have an opinion, I have your opinion. That is a fundamental issue for me. If every state can run as a state in a federation and they can afford to pay their governors whatever they want to.
For life.
And they can. Whether you like it or not, let me tell you something. Whether you like it or not, laws are laws. Whether they are bad or whether they are good is a different thing. It is the law.
Okay, let's hear the other view.
So what are you saying?
Let's hear the other view.
But when you can't pay pensioners, you can't do things, and governors are chatting away money.
Let's hear the other side of the story. Prof, I will come to you in a second. But Yemi, what's the other side?
Sorry that I bought it, but I wanted to be
disagree passionately.
Yeah, and I'm sorry about it, but I wanted us to be clear about the fact that you don't get it is not necessarily a fact that you don't believe in the law. It might be just a political issue, which is what started with Zamfara. Zamfara was being paid, then suddenly the governor said, wait a minute, why are we paying this?
Because there was a change of party.
No, a change of party, exactly.
Yes.
Exactly, so that's what. So there could be a political issue that makes it not possible. And as you said, the way Fashola left Lagos State might also have been an issue. But anyway, the fundamental issue for this law is not an issue around the affordability of it, it's the morality of it.
So morals and law are very different. I hope you know.
But let's be very clear.
You are talking to a lawyer.
When we talk about pension...
I don't...
Chike, hold on, just hold on.
I don't look at law sentimentally.
No, just hold
That's
on.
the difference between me and you.
It's in the passing of the... Sorry, Prof, hold on, let me finish. Hold on, Prof. It's in the passing of the law. The law was passed from a very selfish point of view. When you discuss pensions, you talk about people who have served for up to the age of 60.
Is it not the state houses of
Did
you let me finish? Now you want to finish.
Sorry.
Did you let me finish, please?
I do apologize. Who have served for up to age 60 or who have served for 35 years. How the hell does working for 4 years get you to be paid 10 million naira monthly.
Talk to the
now,
assembly.
The law,
For life.
For life.
Talk
now,
to the assemblies.
and I agree with you. And it's also part, which is why I'm saying that it's not an issue of the federation. It's an issue of how we pass laws and how citizens engage in that process. Do they know what laws are being passed? Do they have an opportunity? Do they come for public hearings? Are they holding their elected State House of Assembly members accountable? This thing has been ongoing. I mean,
Well, yeah, I mean, this is quite an interesting subject, but we need to take a short break now.
We'll be back.
When we return, the conversation will continue. Welcome back to This Day Live, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News Channel. Still with me, I have Professor Bola Akinterewa, Director General, Bolitak Center for International Diplomacy and Strategic Studies. Chike Ogia, former Commissioner of Information, Delta State, and Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director, Enough is Enough. Now, Yemi, you were just beginning to outline your points before we went on break. Let's hope that there will be no hot controversy this time
hopefully not.
between you and Chike.
Not at all, my dear brother. No, but his point, and just for his point was that it's a law. And so in terms of even the implementation of the law, but I'm saying that the premise of the law was faulty. One, because it was passed selfishly. Secondly, there's no work that they have done that entitles them to those sums of money. People get pensions based on 35 years of service or age 60. You work for 4 years, and then you want to be collecting 10 million naira monthly for life, medical, or 8 years, or medical coverage at home and abroad. And the framing of that package that they get is their understanding of what they believe they have done for the state. So it's not the fact that you've served, just believe that the state has money and I can now rely on this. And the same thing is paralleled in the National Assembly while we're at it. Every National Assembly member gets a severance package every 4 months, every 4 years. So it doesn't matter if you're in the Senate for 4 terms. 4 terms is 16 years. After every 4 years, you will get a severance package. So we definitely need to review those laws. Again, kudos to Serap for staying on this and ensuring that these laws are repealed. But your question is very valid in relation to your point about the federation. Can Malami become a collecting agent on behalf of 21 states when the laws have nothing to do with the federal?
And in any case, the point that Chike, in the various states, and the challenge perhaps is to repeal those laws.
Yeah, indeed.
Is for other states to follow the example of Zamfara State and ensure that nobody can use the law as a subterfuge. Exactly. Prof, quickly on this subject.
I subscribe to all the submissions of Chike, with the exception of where he gives the impression that if a state is solvent enough, it should pay that on the basis of law. I don't agree with that at all. I agree with Yemi in the argument that, look, even if there is no good relationship between morality and law as submitted by Chike, the issue is that if someone is not qualified in terms of either 35 years of service, 60 years of age, or 300% of basic salary severance package, then why will a senator, a legislator, being in office for 4 years, 8 years, now make law that will now make him to qualify to be entitled for that type of pension? That is where the issue is. We can say law is law, but please, if law is law 100% without query, why was the law repealed in Zamfara?
Well, on that note, we'll need to move to the next subject. I think we should also be calling on civil society and the people in the various states to put pressure on their lawmakers
because
to repeal the laws.
Must be repealed.
In those states, indeed.
And not just to repeal the laws. Other states where the law does not exist, they should not be tempted to enact such
it's not
similar
just repealing,
laws.
they must refund, and make it retroactive since the time they have been
No, laws are never retroactive in a democracy.
Let's discuss NATO. The next topic will interest you, Prof. And this is NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, which kicked off 10 talks at a hotel near Watford in the United Kingdom on Wednesday, seeking to make a show of unity, despite bickering among leaders as a festering row with Turkey. There are calls that the leaders must work together in honor of those who started the post-war military alliance 70 years ago. A bitter row between US President Donald Trump and his French counterpart Emmanuel Macron over the state and future of the group have already overshadowed the meeting. The French president has called for a renewed strategic dialogue with Moscow and demanded that Turkey should explain itself over its assault on Kurdish forces and its purchase of the Russian S-400 air defense system. President Trump says Macron's statements are nasty, but agrees that NATO members must do more to sustain the alliance. Well, at the end of the meeting and the celebration, they still issued a statement. And, they agreed on a number of things, that China is of interest, that Russia cannot be isolated, that individual countries can engage Russia on their own terms. They further stressed the importance of NATO to the battle against terrorism. And then there was also the issue of raw overspending. And President Trump's insistence that with the US contributing 3.4% of its defense budget to NATO, every other country should contribute at least a minimum of 2% of their defense budget to NATO. And we have seen an increase in the amount, and there is the projection that in a short while you will have increased contribution and spending. But Prof, this is your territory.
There are two issues we should recall. We should remember that the North Atlantic Treaty Organization began with its headquarters in France before it was moved to Belgium, Brussels.
And with 12 members.
Was it so? It is simply because NATO has two types of membership, but people often ignore this. We have the political membership and we have the military membership on the basis of Article 5 of the NATO agreement, which considers an attack on any member state as an attack on all others. So what happened was that in 1965, 1966, the French did complain to the Americans that they did not like the idea of the Americans, dictating to them the modalities for security protection or how to be integrated into their military integration, which is the second category of membership. So in this particular case, the French were embittered with the fact that the Americans will never consult with them. They will just give directives. And they contested that. On that basis, the headquarters of the NATO is the current University of Paris Dauphine. All right? When the French complained that, okay, they do not want to belong to the military integration aspect of the membership, okay, the NATO now had to move, the French withdrew. So the current disagreement between France and the US of today dates back to that time of 1966. So for anybody to want to understand the disagreement, the French have not always accepted the idea of a supranational authority, that of the US over that of the French. Now the second point in this case is that the US truly is paying more than 3% and is insisting that others should pay 2% of the budget. We cannot quarrel with the position of the US because of the 29 members of the NATO as of today. Probably by December 31 this year, we will have as many as 9 only meeting that particular even 2%. They are not doing so. So it has become a burden on the US. So the extent to which one can quarrel with Donald Trump in that case may be a different kettle of fish. But what we should all note about NATO today is simply that we should remember that NATO came into being specifically as a counter mechanism against the Warsaw Pact. You know, the Warsaw Pact, the Comecon, as they call it then, is to ensure, to bring about the Eastern Solidarity Alliance
against NATO.
Against NATO.
Yes.
So,
and NATO wanting to check USSR expansionist ambition.
Very correct.
If
so,
you ask me, if you ask me, because you know Prof is a prof, he will prophesy for the rest of the time we have. But if you ask me, I would say that the times have changed.
We will need to go now.
And NATO should understand
that. And the future of NATO is important
yes, the
as a
times
stabilizing force for global peace.
Yes.
You've been watching This Day Live, the Sunday talk show here on Arise News. I'm Ruben Abate from our entire team here in Lagos. It's bye for now, and thank you very much for watching. See you next week.